The Long Road to Friendship by the Albino Corn. Step 5. If you're gonna come around. There was a thud as Sunset dropped the last can of spray paint into the back of the truck. She rubbed her fingers on her jeans, smearing the leftover paint across them and making a face of disgust. She turned from the curbside and admired a week's worth of hard work that had resulted in the new front wall of the school. It more or less looked the same. Principal Celestia said the school budget wouldn't allow for them to spring for anything fancy. Still, Sunset felt some satisfaction knowing that she had helped rebuild it with her own blood, sweat, and tears. And she vowed never to do it again. She had almost been able to sneak away the second they had put in the front door, but one of the workers had politely asked her to help stay and clean everything up, and Sunset just couldn't say no. Clean up had taken another hour of Sunset's time. Not that she had much to do, but still, anything beat working longer than she had to. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon when the construction workers finally left, leaving Snips and Snails and Sunset alone in front of the school. The two boys were talking to one another while Sunset rested against the statue, her arms tired from another day of manual labor. Just as the two boys began walking away, Sunset called out to them. She had something she needed to get off her chest, and it had taken days to finally work up the nerve to say it. "Snips, Snails," she barked. It hadn't meant to come out that way. She was just so used to addressing them as nothing more than servants. They both flinched before slowly turning around, like two children who had been caught stealing sweets from the kitchen. Their large puppy dog eyes made Sunset purse her lips and cross her arms out of habit. That was usually the expression they gave her when they had bad news to deliver, and they knew she hated bad news. Snips rubbed the back of his neck, trying to avoid Sunset's gaze. "Listen, Sunset, we don't want to hang out with you anymore." Yeah, Snails continued, taking slow steps backward. "My mom said you're a bad influence, and we don't want to get into any more trouble." Both of them proceeded to duck and cover their faces in preparation for Sunset's imminent lashing. She watched them stay like that for a whole minute, honestly thinking whether or not she should hit them one last time. When the beating never came, Snails uncurled himself and looked up at Sunset with a more than usual dim-witted expression. Aren't you going to hit us?" "No. Do you want me to hit you?" Snips covered Snails' mouth. "No, we're good," he said hastily. "All right, then." Sunset stared at them, trying to find the right words to say. She had never really apologized for anything before, at least not on her sole free will. She rolled her head back and looked at the salmon-colored sky, sighing. "Listen, you two, I just wanted to say." She mumbled something that was lost on the gentle wind. "What?" Snips and Snails asked simultaneously. "I said I'm sorry, okay?" She brought her gaze back to them. It must have been unnerving because both of them flinched again. "I'm sorry you guys got dragged down with me. You two were just following orders. None of this was your fault, so I'm sorry." Sunset fought against the urge to gag. The very act of asking for forgiveness made her feel sick to her stomach, but some small part of her, an annoying part that she was becoming more and more aware of, felt like she at least needed to apologize to the two she had treated as helper monkeys for the past year. Both of them gave her stares of incomprehension. They looked at each other and then back to Sunset and then to each other again. "Sunset, are you—" Snips was cut off by a wave of Sunset's hand. "No questions. Just know that I said sorry, okay? You don't have to accept it, but it's there." She started walking down the road past Snips and Snails, who flinched once more. She had reached the corner when Snips called back to her. "Sunset, thanks. I guess, for what it's worth, it's not all of it was bad." Snails nodded. Yeah, turning into monsters was pretty cool. It was just like Halloween. Sunset shook her head and kept walking. Idiots, she mumbled. Still, she was glad that they didn't outright hate her. Under different circumstances, Sunset could have easily manipulated them back into working for her, but now her heart just wasn't in it. She wanted to be cruel. She wanted to be spiteful. She wanted to blame everyone around her and lash out with rage, but with every passing day, Sunset was finding it harder and harder to deny that she was in the wrong. The fault was hers. Well, mostly. She could find some solace in blaming Princess Twilight Sparkle and her friends. Unfortunately, the solace quickly melted into annoyance when she remembered she now had to be friends with them. It was just one defeat after another, beaten, cursed, and now forced to be friends with the people who put her in her situation in the first place. Just until I can trick the elements into getting this curse off of me, then I'm going to get my revenge and get as far away from them as possible. She knew it was easier said than done. Tomorrow would be her first test, a whole day at the street fair. She gave an involuntary shudder at the thought. There were about 1,000 things she'd rather do than spend a whole day with the 5 of them. I wonder if I tie myself up so I can't leave. Sunset blanched. All right, now I'm just being ridiculous. Sunset woke to the sound of the repetitive ring of her alarm buzzing against her ears. She took the pillow and slammed it over her head, trying to drown out the noise. Eventually, common sense returned to her, and she reached out to slap the alarm clock, shutting it off. Peaceful silence reigned throughout her room once more. Sunset closed her eyes with relief and eager to go back to sleep. Technically, Pinky never said when I had to be there. Sunset was now inclined to believe that the universe hated her, for at that moment she could hear her phone ring in her jacket pocket. Don't pick it up, just leave it alone. You might be able to get out of this one on technicality. The phone continued to emit its high-pitched ring, persistent on being answered. Sunset matched its persistency with her stubbornness, refusing to move out of her comfortable spot. Just as the phone rang and rang, the question of how any of them had gotten her number popped into her head. She made it a point to ask them the next time she saw them. After an hour, Sunset was ready to chuck her phone out the window. She crawled out of bed and thrusted her hand into her jacket pocket, snatching her phone and checking the screen. 157 missed called. 156 bing. 157 voicemails, 50 text messages, all of them from one number. The phone vibrated in Sunset's hand, begging to be answered. Just throw it, Sunset. Rip out the battery. Ignore it. Just for the love of Celestia, don't pick it up. Sunset's thumb unflipped the phone. She held it up to her ear. Hello? Damn it, girl, why? Oh my gosh, Sunset, I was starting to think you were never going to pick up. Pinky's shrill voice drilled into Sunset's brain. Were you asleep? I bet you were asleep. I mean, it's Saturday. I just love sleeping in on Saturdays, but I love hanging out with my friends even more. And it's 11 anyway, and my granny pie used to always say to me, the early bird catches the worm, which is weird saying because we are birds and we definitely don't eat worms. Oh, but before I forget, we're all going to meet at the corner of 3rd and Hay Street at noon so we can start spending the day together. I forgot to tell you on Thursday, and I'd hate for you to get lost. Yes, Pinky, I was asleep. Sunset finally got to answer. Oopsie, sorry I woke you up, but it's time to rise and shine anyway. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's such a lovely day. Good morning, good morning. Sunset slammed the phone shut, restraining herself not to throw it against the wall. It was decided that she hated Pinkie Pie the most. With a loud groan, she stood up and looked at herself in the mirror, noting her horrible bedhead and the bags under her eyes. I should probably get ready before I'm dragged down there looking like this. She gathered her clothes for the day and made her way to the bathroom. The water felt exceptionally cold that morning. After getting dressed and applying a little makeup, Sunset moved to the kitchen and shoved a hot pocket into the microwave. Just as it dinged, Sunset felt the jolt run through her spine and her legs began to move on their own accord. No, wait a minute. I'm going to go. Just give me a sec. She reached for her phone and checked the time. It was exactly noon. Sunset gripped the door frame, trying to drag herself back into the kitchen to at least fetch her lunch, but the rest of her body wouldn't have it. With a few loud swears, Sunset gave up and marched out her front door, slamming it with extra vice. This is officially cruel and unusual punishment. You're late. Sunset glared at Rainbow Dash as she approached the 5 girls sitting at a small cafe on 3rd Street. They all gave her a welcoming smile, save for Rainbow, who had simply pointed an accusatory finger. Forgive me, Your Highness. I wasn't informed of the time until the last minute. Don't give me any of that, Rainbow snipped. Pinkie told us she had spent an hour trying to call you. Pinkie bobbed her head. Yeah, but I guess I must have killed your battery because the connection died while I was talking. Yeah, battery died. That was it. Sunset made sure not to make eye contact. Anyway, let's hurry up and get this over with. Rainbow huffed. No need to sound so enthusiastic. Feel free to leave whenever you want. Trust me, I would if I could. Fluttershy put a hand on Rainbow's shoulder. Be nice, both of you. We're here to have fun, remember? Sunset looked down the street to where the plethora of booths and tables had been set up. Small carnival games were dispersed between trinket stands, and Sunset could even see a petting zoo way down at the end of the block. None of it looked real appealing. Yeah, I'm not sure any of this can constitute as fun, Sunset said with a deep line of skepticism. She felt an arm wrap around her neck as Pinkie Pie looked her into a close embrace. Oh, don't be such a party pooper, Sunset. There's all kinds of fun to be had at the street fair. Pinkie, you're violating rule number 1, Sunset said testily. Pinkie removed her arm, but the smile didn't leave her face. I really want to see the magic show later. Fluttershy pointed to the end of the street. I'd really love to go see the petting zoo, if it isn't too much trouble, that is. Me and RD put on a wager, Applejack said. The one with fewer prizes from the games has to come to school wearing the frilliest dress Rarity can make. Rarity looked up from the smoothie she had been drinking. Why hadn't I been informed of this? We're telling you now, aren't we? We're telling you now, aren't we? Rainbow grinned. Humph. Rarity stood up from the table and discarded her cup into the trash. Very well, I'll do it, but only because it'd be absolutely worth it to see Applejack and Frills. Hey, what makes you think I'm gonna lose? Nothing, but a girl can dream, can't she? Sunset massaged her temples, swearing under her breath. Listen, are you just going to sit here and talk, or are you actually going to do something? Because if I wanted to do nothing, I would have stayed home. Rainbow's grin melted back into a scowl. Why don't you just go home, then? Sunset tried to turn and leave, but found her boots stuck to the ground. She looked back at the rainbow and growled, I can't. Why not? Sunset waited for her vocal cords to act on their own. Her stomach constricted in fear, and she could feel her heart rate soar. Crap, they'll find out about the curse. I'm doomed. She didn't care if they had good intentions. If they found out that they could make her do anything they wanted by asking, her lie would be over. It was bad enough with them involuntarily asking things of her if they did it consciously. Only the words never came. There was no force in her throat, and there was like there usually was when she was asked a question. Sunset blinked slowly as her revelation dawned on her. I don't have to tell them about the curse. I can lie about that. I don't have to tell them squat. It seemed the elements had been merciful in some small degree. Sunset would have danced right then and there if it weren't for the confused stares she was receiving. She still hadn't answered Rainbow's question. Because I'm just so excited to be spending the day with all of you. Man, it feels good to lie again. See, I told you girls she'd warm up to us, Pinkie cheered. Rainbow gave both Sunset and Pinky a look of hard disbelief before brushing them off and starting down the street. Sunset sneered behind her. "Don't worry, Dash. The feeling's mutual." Not wanting to start a scene, the group departed from the cafe, deciding to explore all the booths first before taking a break for the magic show, and then ending the day with the petting zoo. The booths they all stopped at had various baubles and knickknacks, none of which appealed to Sunset. Whenever the clerk would ask if she was interested in something, Sunset gave a curt, stinging reply of no. Something she would probably have done without even the curse. They spent over half an hour at a small jewelry stand, waiting for Rarity to make up her mind whether or not she wanted to buy something. She put on a pair of expensive-looking earrings, admiring herself in the mirror. "What do you think, Sunset? Does this make me look good?" Sunset leaned against the counter, the epitome of boredom on her face. Why Rarity was asking for her opinion, she would never know. "I think it makes you look like a..." "Oh, is that a ruby necklace?" Rarity darted off into another table. Sunset breathed a sigh of relief. She would have hated if Rarity had heard the end of that sentence. In the end, Rarity decided that she couldn't afford to buy any of the jewelry on display. "They all look nice, but I should really be saving my money for the holidays." "Well, there goes half an hour I'll never get back," Sunset grumbled to herself. She gave a side glance at Rarity, who continued walking like she hadn't heard anything. They stopped at all the game booths, watching Applejack and Rainbow Dash compete for the most prizes. Applejack won the water gun shootout, and Rainbow Dash retaliated by crushing her at a free throw competition. The next booth was a classic knock the balls down with a baseball type of game. Applejack and Rainbow took turns making perfect shots until Rainbow finally misjudged her throw and left one bottle standing. After claiming her prize of a large stuffed teddy bear, Applejack picked up another baseball and held it out to Sunset. "Come on, girl, why don't you quit being such a stick in the mud and have a little fun?" Sunset assumed that was supposed to be taken as a favor, since her hand reacted and took the ball. She shrugged, deciding one game wouldn't kill her. After tossing it up and down a few times to get a feel for it, Sunset took aim at the stacked silver milk bottles, her face a mask of concentration. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it right. She brought her arm back and then hurled the ball with all her strength, watching it tear through the air, straight past the bottles and through the back of the booth's tenting. Rainbow burst into uncontrollable laughter, doubling over in tears. "Oh my God, that was horrible!" "Wow," Applejack rubbed the back of her neck. "That was unexpected." Sunset stared open-mouthed at the hole she had made. How on earth had she missed a throw like that? She felt her eye began to twitch, and Rainbow fell over onto the ground, still laughing at Sunset's failure. The operator of the stand looked from Sunset to the hole in the back. Would you like to try again?" Glaring daggers, Sunset said in clipped tones. "Yes, I'd like to try again." He placed another ball on the corner and took a few steps to the side. Sunset grabbed the ball, took aim once more, trying to drown out Rainbow's snickering. She had half a mind to aim for her head, but knew she probably wouldn't get any friendship points from that. She let the ball fly from her hand, watching it sail once more, this time on a straight course for the bottles. There was a clink and a crash as they fell to the floor, and Sunset whirled around and jabbed a finger at Rainbow. "Ha! In your face!" Still smiling, Rainbow got back to her feet. "Oh yeah, you sure showed me. Way to finally knock those over." Sunset wanted to make a scathing retort, but was interrupted by the man behind the counter. "Ma'am, here's your prize." He held out a small pink unicorn doll. How ironic, Sunset thought, taking the plushie in her hands. "Aw," Pinky materialized by Sunset's shoulder. "It's so cute. What are you gonna name it?" "Nothing. Why would I name an inanimate object?" "Because it's fun, silly." Sunset rolled her eyes and shoved the toy in Pinky's hands. "Then you keep it. I'm sure you two will be very happy together." Pinky shook her head and pushed it back. "I can't take that from you. It's your prize. Besides, I'm sure she'll be much happier with you. You two have so much in common." She? Sunset looked back down at the unicorn. It did seem to possess more feminine qualities. Of course, in this world, all unicorns are generalized as feminine creatures. Humph. Fine, I'll keep you. A sinister smile crept into Sunset's face. I'll call you Twilight Sparkle, and when we get home, I'll show you your new castle, the top of the stove. See, I knew you would get along, Pinky beamed. Come see the supreme mystical artist Lulamoon. Rainbow read off the sign in front of the impromptu stage that had been set up. Lulamoon. Wait, isn't that Trixie's last name? Rarity nodded. Must be related. Her father, I'd wager. Ugh. Pinky, you really want to see this? Pinky nodded and said, Uh-huh, I hear he's really good, and not like Trixie, who is okay good, but actually good. He was opening act in Las Vegas. Well, we're already agreed to see it, so I guess we might as well take our seats, Rainbow sighed. For once, Sunset agreed with her. This was sure to be another colossal waste of their time. Trixie was dismal at best. There was no way her father could be much better if he were the one teaching her. They took their seats near the front row, Pinky bouncing up and down on her chair with excitement. Looking around, Sunset saw a pretty large crowd that had gathered. Poor saps, at least no one had to pay for this. There was a large plume of purple smoke that covered the stage, and from it a man appeared. He was tall, with silver hair and a well-trimmed goatee, and was wearing a very large, expensive-looking blue suit with white shoes and a purple cape. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, he started in the typical showman type of voice, welcome to today's performance of the supreme and mystical Artemis Lulamoon. The stage erupted with lights and sparkles, and the crowd began to clap and cheer. That wasn't magic, that was just pyrotechnics, Artemis grinned. A wave of laughter rippled through the crowd. Sunset just blew a stray piece of hair out of her face. Ah, I can already tell you'll be a lovely audience. He reached into his sleeve and produced a large bouquet of flowers, tossing it into the crowd. Just as some of the older girls in the crowd reached out for it, the flowers burst into a stream of bubbles and were blown away by the wind. While the girls looked disappointed, the rest of the crowd clapped in amazement. It's just smoke and mirrors, Sunset muttered, only to be shushed by Rainbow. All right, time for some real magic, Artemis announced, pulling out a wand from his other sleeve. Now, with my magic words, I'm going to make... He scanned the crowd until his sleeves landed on Pinkie Pie. That young girl right there. Levitate up to the stage. Pinkie gasped, breaking into a smile that Sunset believed shouldn't have been able to fit on her face. Artemis waved his wand. 1, 2, 3, Lulamoon! Pinkie's entire chair instantly began to rise off the ground and float towards the main stage. Everyone began to murmur in excitement. Even Sunset had to admit she was struck with wonder. Magic like that shouldn't be possible in this world. Pinkie landed on the stage and clapped her hands. That was so amazing! Glad you enjoyed it, kid, but I'm not done yet. For my next act, I'll pull a rabbit from your hair. He reached into the nest that was Pinkie's mane, rummaging around for a few seconds before frowning. Well, this is a twist. He withdrew his arm, bringing with him not a white rabbit, but a small green reptile. Is this a baby crocodile? Nope, Pinkie smiled, taking the scaly creature from Artemis. This is my pet baby alligator, Gummy. Don't worry, he doesn't even have any teeth, see? Pinkie pulled back his mouth, revealing only pink gums. Artemis scratched his head. Well now, that's some magic all on its own. He smiled as the crowd chuckled at his and Pinkie's antics. Regardless, Lulamoon! The chair levitated again, returning it back to its original spot between Sunset and Rainbow. Sunset stared at Pinkie and Gummy, her mouth set in a thin line. Why do you have a baby alligator in your hair? Because fish are too mainstream. Now, Artemis continued, could I please have a willing volunteer come and assist me on stage? Sunset felt her hand shoot up, and she said, I'll do it. What the heck? That wasn't aimed at me, and he said willing volunteer. The damage was done, however, as Artemis pointed her out and beckoned her to the stage. "All right, Sunset, woohoo!" Pinkie cheered. "I'm surprised she volunteered in the first place," Applejack whispered to Rarity, who nodded in turn. Sunset stamped onto the stage, an angry scowl on her face. "All right, what do you want me to do?" "First off, smile more. It'd be a shame if your pretty face got stuck like that," Artemis joked. "Not gonna happen." "Boy, you're just a ball of sunshine, aren't ya?" At that moment, a sphere of light appeared over Sunset's head, and the crowd broke into more laughter. "At least tell us your name." "Sunset Shimmer." "Well, Sonny, for my next trick, I'm going to saw you in half." Sunset's half-lidded stare quickly changed into an expression of horror. "What?" "Oh, come on, it'll be fun." He pointed his wand at the curtain behind him, which opened to reveal a long horizontal box. "You slip inside, I cut you in half and separate them for the audience to see. Then I'll go out for a milkshake and come back in time to put you back together." "Not funny," Sunset growled. Artemis tapped her on the nose. "Then you, my friend, need a better sense of humor." He stood up straight. "Besides, you already volunteered, so into the box you go." Begrudgingly, Sunset walked over to the box and climbed inside. Artemis closed both sections, leaving only her head and feet exposed. He produced a saw from what looked like a thin air and held it over the middle of the box. "If I die here, my most notable accomplishment will have been almost taking over Equestria. That's a sad thought." Sunset heard that this type of trick was performed all the time, but she always thought the people who volunteered knew beforehand, and that there was really just some dummy in the second half of the box. Now that she was lying up there, Sunset realized that she was seriously dealing with the idea that she was about to be cut in half. "Now, children, I ask that you don't try this at home. Are you ready, Sunset?" No, and I think you're out of your mind." Artemis shrugged. "I've been told worse. Lulamoon!" With that, he brought the saw down, cutting into the indent that marked the separation of the two halves of the box. Sunset closed her eyes, waiting for the teeth of the blade to begin cutting into her. "I hope you're happy, Elements. I'm going to die, and it's completely your fault." After a few minutes, Sunset opened her eye, wondering why she wasn't feeling excruciating pain yet. Artemis was staring down at her with a bemused expression. "I was wondering how long you'd stay like that." He put a hand on each side of the box and shouted, "Lulamoon!" With a push, he separated the two halves, leaving Sunset with the oddest tingling sensation she had ever felt. "What the heck?" She wiggled her foot and could see it moving from the other box. "This is freaky." The audience erupted into applause, and Artemis began to bow theatrically. Thank you. 'Twas an easy feat." "Hey, do you mind sticking me back together now?" Artemis chuckled. "But of course, if you say the magic words." Sunset rolled her eyes and grumbled something. "Sorry, couldn't quite hear you, dear." "Lulamoon," she said, just loud enough to be heard. She heard the boxes snap back together, and a tingling sensation around her middle vanished. She got out of the box and felt around her stomach for any scars. "I don't get it," she said in amazement. "How did you do that?" "Silly Sonny, a magician never reveals his secrets." Sunset crossed her arm. "That's just something amateurs say when the answer is really obvious but well hidden." "Amateur, you say?" Artemis clapped his hands and was quickly enveloped in purple smoke. When anticipated, his place was a rabbit chewing on a carrot. "I just turned myself into a rabbit." The rabbit's mouth moved in perfect sync with the words Sunset heard, but she refused to believe it was actually the rabbit saying them. "Can you turn into a rabbit?" "I don't think so." "No, but I could turn into a demon and eat you in one bite." There was a pause, then the rabbit burst into laughter. It looked up at her and said, "I like you, kid. You got jokes." There was another puff of smoke, and the human Artemis returned with a bow. "Please give my lovely assistant a hand." He gestured to Sunset, his own hands giving having popped out from his sleeve and began clapping on their own. The audience gave a loud round of applause, though none of them outdid Pinkie with her wild cheers. Sunset felt heat rising to her cheeks and tried to hide her blushing with more scowling. Artemis patted her head and spoke into her ear. You know, you should really try smiling more often. I've found you get a lot further in life when you smile. Sunset snorted. At least you didn't say please. Thanks for the advice. I'll keep it in mind. Good. Well, ladies and gents, that's all for today. Come back tomorrow to see more mind-boggling tricks. With that, I bid you adieu. In one last cloud of smoke, Artemis vanished, leaving behind a firecracker that shot into the air and exploded in a shower of light. As soon as Sunset stepped off the stage, Pinkie rushed over to her. Well, Sunset, that was so cool. You make a really good assistant. How did it feel to be sawed in half? Weird, Sunset said, subconsciously rubbing her stomach. I hate to admit it, but that was pretty impressive for show magic. After the show, the girls stopped to get something to eat. Try as she might, Sunset couldn't find a stand that didn't sell something that was deep-fried or greasy. In the end, she settled for a hot dog. Sitting at the small table, Sunset listened to Rarity talk about this year's fall fashion, while Rainbow Dash and Applejack counted up to who had the most prizes. Rainbow had won by a single spider ring. Applejack groaned and put her face on the table. I hate frills. Rarity patted her on the shoulder. Don't worry, dear. I'm going to make you a dress so dazzling all the boys will be turning their heads when you walk down the hall. Terrific. Sunset smirked. She had to admit she'd love to see that. They moved along, heading for their last destination, the petting zoo. Fluttershy was now chatting excitedly over all the cute animals that were on display, listing off facts that only Pinkie seemed to be generally interested in. The animal pen smelled of old hay and droppings, making Sunset wrinkle her nose. Despite the fact that she had been once a pony, Sunset had never had a huge fondness for animals, at least not the mindless ones in this world. Fluttershy, however, had taken to them like a bee to honey. She ran over to the nearest sheep and began stroking its wool, cooing, "Oh, you're just the cutest, softest thing ever!" The sheep let out a happy "baa" in response. Sunset wandered around, careful not to step on anything that even remotely looked like animal pellets, while she avoided making contact with any of the animals. Everyone else seemed to be enjoying themselves. Hey, look, Sunset! Pinkie pointed to a brown pony. It's one of your cousins. Ha ha, very funny. Sunset deadpanned. She felt something grip onto the back of her coat and began to pull on it. She looked down to see a goat making a meal out of her leather jacket. What the? Let go! Get your own jacket! Sunset started tugging, trying to get the goat to release, but it merely grunted and continued chewing. Shoo! Shoo! She swatted at it. Fluttershy looked up from the pig she was feeding. Oh dear, Sunset, please be careful with him. Let go of my jacket, you stupid goat, or I swear I'll... Shrip! Sunset tumbled backwards, falling into the hay that matted the floor, while the goat she had been playing tug-of-war with just chewed on the black fabric hanging out of its mouth. Fluttershy rushed over and held out a hand to Sunset. Oh my goodness, are you okay? No, I'm not okay! Sunset smacked Fluttershy's hand away and stood up, showing off the large tear in her already ruined jacket. That stupid goat just ate part of my clothes. How the hell does it chew through leather? Fluttershy took a few steps back. Oh, well, I'm sure he's very sorry. He's a mindless animal, and sorry is not going to fix this. She gave Fluttershy's shoulders a sharp poke. You just had to want to come to the petting zoo. Of all places, this is your fault. Rainbow swooped in and shoved Sunset back down into the hay. Back off, Shimmer. This isn't her fault. All you've done most of the day is complain. If you really don't want to be here, then why don't you do us all a favor and leave? Rainbow shouted. Gladly. With a familiar jolt running down her back, Sunset got up and stormed away from the weeping Fluttershy and fuming Rainbow Dash. Sunset, wait! Sunset clapped her hands over her ears, not wanting to hear whatever Pinkie had to say. She had finally been released from her favor. There was no way she was going back. I knew this was a stupid idea. Author's note. To put this to rest, I have decided that yes, death is off the table. I'd like to not turn this into a dark fic.